$1 million. Free to play. You just need to survive. It's the Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Pick one team to win each week. Get it right, move on. Get it wrong, you're out. The last fan standing take home a guaranteed $1 million cash prize. And for every player who joins, we add $1 to the pot, up to $10 million. The Fanatics NFL Survivor Pool. Play free on the Fanatics app. App access open to all. Must be 21 plus and joined by 9/8 to play. No purchase necessary. U.S. only. Void where prohibited. Subject to complete terms. See fanatics.com/game rules.
And now a message from McAfee.
Your package couldn't be delivered.
You owe thousands in unpaid tolls.
You want a free gift.
If texts like these sound familiar, McAfee can help. McAfee automatically identifies text and email scams as well as AI-generated audio to help you stay safe. If they're faking it, they're not making it past us. Get award-winning scam detection today. McAfee.com/keepitreal.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Something's been happening over billions of years where asteroids and meteorites have been striking the surface of the moon. More so on the far side of the moon than the near side, during a period in geologic history called the Great Bombardment. And that ties very much into the story we're about to share with you, with a very special guest and the author of a brand new book that comes out September the 9th. The book, of course, The Last Extinction. The real science behind the death of the dinosaurs. Dr. Gerta Keller will be joining us in just a moment. But what's the backstory? The story behind Dr. Gerta Keller's world-shattering scientific discovery that dinosaur extinction was not caused by asteroidal impact, but rather by volcanic eruptions on the Indian Peninsula. A discovery that highlights today's existential threat, as she says, of greenhouse gases and climate change, and one that sparked an all-out war waged by the scientific establishment, simply known as the Dinosaur Wars. More information on this incredible book and our guest. In 1980, the father and son team of Luis and Walter Alvarez of the University of California, Berkeley, boldly claimed to have solved one of the most vexing problems in science, the death of the dinosaurs. In a paper published in Science magazine, still regarded with "Remember where you were when you first read it" reverence, their extinction by asteroid impact theory was later buoyed by the discovery of a 110-mile impact crater centered in Chicxulub, Mexico. There was just one problem. They were wrong, and Gerta Keller's scientific discoveries blew their theory to bits. Gerta Keller is professor of paleontology and geology in the Geosciences Department of Princeton University. With that, Dr. Keller, good morning, and thank you being up with us this early morning. Thanks for joining us on this exciting story we're about to hear. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
It's a privilege and honor. You know, it's amazing. This book comes out, on September the 9th by, of course, looking at the publisher here, Diversion Books. This is fascinating to me because in the astronomical world, ladies and gentlemen, you may have heard about this story, about an asteroidal impact, and you may have been concerned and just brushed it off and said, well, that happens over the course of history. But, Doctor, tell us a little bit about yourself, because I want to zoom in on your background for a good reason. Because many women listening out there may find this very interesting story and appeals to them. Start off with where you were born, your early education, and then as we move toward the dinosaur wars, tell us more.
I was born in Liechtenstein, which is a very tiny country of about, just a couple of miles. It's the fourth smallest. Liechtenstein is right next to Switzerland. And in fact, it's across the border. So I was born as number 6 of a dozen children.
Yes.
And from that, it made it rather difficult, in the sense that I wanted always to learn some things. Already when I was 5 years old. And it didn't always work, because there was no money. My parents were poor, and we couldn't get much of an education. It was a small village, and and it would take a long way to bicycle from one side to the other.
I see.
And so the next step basically was when I started my primary school, and then it's basically just a schoolhouse with one teacher that taught 4 classes, and then the other teacher was another one, a step up. So I was actually managed to, in my first class, to already read every book that the library had.
That's amazing.
And that was fun. So the next year, my mother said, okay, if you need more books, there is this Book of the Month Club, and you can buy 7 books every week. Not buy, read every week. And those, if you like them, then you buy it. And if you don't like it, then you send back and look for another one.
Right, because you love books, right?
Exactly. And I actually started reading Tolstoy.
Wow. That's a diversion from science, I'll say. There you go.
And Brothers Kamaradzov and all the Russian writers. Mm-hmm. And that was fantastic. And then I stepped up to my younger siblings, and I read them and tried to teach them. I managed with one of them.
Yes.
The other ones didn't much make it. Well, later on, when I went to a special school for the next education for smarter kids, it wasn't all that good because you could not learn anything at that stage other than sewing and cleaning and cooking.
Yes.
And fixing your clothes. And that
Wow.
Are somebody's.
So in other words, in simplicity, I mean, you're giving us a good outline of your background, which I'm asking about. It's very sad because they didn't really want to see. And again, look at the times that we were talking about. I mean, women were supposed to be what? Mending clothes, being at home with the children, and doing the cooking and cleaning.
Absolutely.
And your life, I mean, not to fast forward, but unfortunately because of time here, that's an amazing story because look at where you are today and the story we're about to share. But Doctor, this is the point that I want to make to the audience, and God bless you for enduring, because during this period of time, my analogous story would be a story about a lady named Dr. Vera Rubin, who in many ways was shunned by the male community trying to get her PhD in astrophysics, but now she's passed on. But she, of course, was, as you know, and many people may not know, one of the great theorists in talking about something in quantum physics called dark matter. But your story is why we're talking with you this morning, and I find it fascinating. So with all that, quote, rejection and negativity, you then decide to leave home, and I'm fast-forwarding with your life here. You go to work for one of the great fashion designers, and you find out that that's not really for you. Your passion happens to be science. So let's move to the United States. You're in the San Francisco area during what many described as the free love drug scene in the hippies world of San Francisco of the 60s. And you had no money, and I'm fast-forwarding for you. You're talking to people on the street, and they say, hey, you can get an education by going to one of these colleges here, and you don't have to pay for it, but you sure have to do your part and pass some tests. So that's how you got started in education. But the point I'm trying to make, and I think it's coming across loud and clear, what we're about to hear, ladies and gentlemen, is a story of a woman who is steadfast. She's not going to hear no for an answer, but it ties into, Doctor, the whole concept of the book here, and I'm going to fast forward on this if you don't mind. We know from science, you know better, that there have been 5 so-called major extinction events in the world in geology that we could talk about. We don't have time to go into every one of them. But your warning in this book, without giving out the secret sauce, is that we may already be in that 6th extinction. And we'll have a guest coming on in the next hour who's talking about what many people may think is the 7th extinction, that of maybe having AI going in a direction that is not necessarily what many people like, but we're not going to disparage AI here. So talk about this. Your whole concept here, if we go back in history, Dr. Luis Alvarez, University of California, Berkeley. This is a person who did so much work in the nuclear world, Manhattan Project and such. Their theory is that this asteroid, 6 to 9 miles in diameter, caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. Dr. Gerta Keller says, no way. Tell us why.
Well, at the beginning, nobody believed it. This was in 1980. Mm-hmm. And I was working at the U.S. Geological Survey at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And everybody, there were about 30 people there in the room that were listening to Alvarez's story. And nobody believed it. They said they were all geologists and paleontologists. And they could not believe any of it. But pretty soon, it took about 2 years, that people the Alvarezes, who would simply belittle anyone who didn't believe it.
And that was you in the direct line of fire, right? Obviously.
Well, not exactly.
Oh, really?
Because at that year, when they came up with the story, I decided not to continue studying it for 5 years. And then it would blow over, because I didn't believe it either. Mm-hmm. And so I learned about asteroids, which was a long way away, but we had found out that some 33,000 years ago, there was an asteroid that hit, and it left very tiny glass spherules. Nobody knew where they came from at the time.
Yes.
But I decided I would look for them, and I would find them, and then I would figure out just what happened there. And I found out a new way of finding these tiny glass spherules, where I would not have to destroy the cores. And it was successful.
Yes.
And I found 4 different types of localities. They were not they were in great distance. Later on, it was one from Russia, mm-hmm. and there was one from in the U.S. in basically what's the area called?
Europe?
No, in the U.S.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This was a U.S. one. Mm-hmm. And it's, it will come back. It's one, so there is one in the U.S., one in Russia. Mm-hmm. And later on more were found. But at the time when I discovered these, I sent it to the journal of Journal of Science, and they accepted it within no time. And evidently, Luis Alvarez had found out about it. And so I was invited by Luis Alvarez to work with them on this other impact, namely these small impact spherules.
So just describe this, Doctor, in the time we have. Many people out there who are listening around the nation, around the world, may have no idea what a paleontologist does. Describe that to us, because that's a fascinating story as a subset and difference from maybe what we're talking about in geology. And then we'll focus on the differences between why should anybody out there even care what the distinct differences are between asteroidal impact and your theory. And I think it's very, very important because, ladies and gentlemen, listening to this particular individual, Dr. Gerta Keller, her book, The Last Extinction, The Real Science Behind the Death of the Dinosaurs, who knows? Many people do speculate that we do live in a sixth extinction. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But tell us what a paleontologist does. That many people may not know.
Well, first of all, in this case, we, as a paleontologist, we need to look at what life was like. What organisms went extinct? What organisms survived? In other words, what happened in the world? And that was always my fascination. And to find out what really happened. And so, basically, what a paleontologist does is look at any kind of life they're interested in, whether it be the biggest ones, like the dinosaurs, or whether it is the smallest ones, like the smallest organisms, which are called foraminifera, or forams for short.
Yes.
They are the size of about a pin. The smallest one are the size of a pinhead.
Yes, but life nonetheless, right? It's interesting.
And they live. And by the way, those pinhead-sized ones was the one species that survived in the fifth extinction and even earlier in the earlier extinctions. But not only that, it survived forever. So far, at least, it still is very abundant just about anywhere in the world.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Because from the one species that survived, the others evolved.
This is fascinating, and I just want to jump in, Doctor, about something that I've been reading. Of all these 5 extinctions that have happened on the Earth, the most impressive thing to me is Mother Nature, if we like to call her that respectfully, of course, has this great ability to survive so many of these amazing tragedies, not only in the paleontological world, but in the geologic world. But what I'm reading here is fascinating. The tiniest little creature that actually survived all, and this is coming to me by doing some research, is these little tiny organisms called tardigrades, which are very often referred to as water bears, and they just look like a little tiny bear. They survived all these extinctions, and they've also been found to survive in deep space on space station, analysis. So the point is, going back to the story here of what happened with these extinctions, your story, if I can summarize it, and please tell me if I'm on measure here, is that what we think when the asteroid hit 66 million years ago, it may not have been the initial or the end-all about where these dinosaurs and how they became extinct. But moving fast forward, your book describes what, without giving away everything, that it wasn't just that impactor, get a load of this, folks, 6 to 9 miles in diameter, striking somewhere off the coast of Mexico, whereas now we call it the Gulf of America, all the way down in that area, creating a 124-mile crater, that it wasn't necessarily just that event. Tell us what the event in your book may have been the leading cause of this extinction of the dinosaurs. Please tell us.
Well, when we go back to the large guys, the dinosaurs, then it was actually the last ones were probably extinct around 66 million years ago. And there were very few left at that point because it already went for 7 million years before that climate had changed because of volcanism, meaning volcanic eruptions in India as well as other places in the world. Yes. And in fact, with that, the climate had changed, and of course, many of the dinosaurs had gone extinct already. And at the end, there were only a few left.
That's amazing. So again, the summary here of these points is that it wasn't just the asteroidal impact, which is a long time ago, a 6 to 9 mile in diameter asteroid. That's nothing to, brush off lightly. That this Deccan, as you call it, Deccan volcanism in India was maybe one of the accelerants that helped destroy the dinosaurs from the planet. But that to me is so fascinating, Doctor, because your book, The Last Extinction, The Real Science Behind the Death of the Dinosaurs, let me salute you again. And I think many out there, particularly our female listeners, you're listening to a story, ladies and gentlemen, of a woman who has really world traveled. She's been on big research ships like the Glomar Challenger, a sister ship to the Glomar Explorer that Howard Hughes had to pull up a nuclear submarine, remnants off in the deep in the Pacific Ocean. But her drilling into the surface of the basic bottom of the ocean revealed some other evidence to her. And as she's describing some of these tiny creatures that obviously survived, or as we talk about this particular story, where did all this, what's the real science behind this? And again, saluting you in a time when men were not, attacking any one in particular individual. In general terms, women were not really favored to get these advanced degrees. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions for our special guest, Dr. Gerta Keller, we'll be here to the top of the hour for hour number 1, of course, 1-800-848-9222. The subject matter, if you're just joining us right now, is many people believed, and I think people should be caring about this, asteroidal impact was considered the main answer to the whole subject, like the Kennedy assassination. It was definitely Lee Harvey Oswald, case closed. But in this case, your persistence, Doctor, has given us a whole new perspective on this. And are you still very active in what you're doing there with Princeton? I mean, describe that to me. You haven't retired, or you're still active in your research there?
I have not retired, and I will never retire.
I like that. There you go.
And so I'm still very active. I still work in India every year. Mm-hmm. I still do a lot of science. And there are so many things that are so interesting that I have still a team of friends and collaborators who work with me in India as well as in other places.
Well, this is research, Doctor, that needs to be talked about, as we're doing here on the Dr. Sky Experience. 1-800-848-9222, ladies and gentlemen, a rare opportunity to speak to someone who understands the dynamics behind geology, understands paleontology, fascinating subjects. And maybe, ladies and gentlemen, you have a person in your, purview that you talk to, or a young student that wants to pursue these particular subjects. I'm sure that our very special guest, Dr. Gerta Keller, would give a thumbs up to anybody out there, male or female, who wants to continue to study these particular subjects. A great university. I visited there many, many times. It's just a beautiful contrast from our Arizona desert to the beauty and the green and the lush trees and everything around in Princeton. Amazing location, an amazing research institute, and an amazing university. Doctor, we're going to be right back. We take in radio, as you know, a hard break at the bottom of the hour. And to all of our friends around the nation and around the world, as we're trying to corroborate all this and pull it together, remember, if you're in dark skies right now and your skies are clear, looking up towards Earth's nearest neighbor, the moon, as we now approach in just hours the full corn moon, some 231,000 miles away from the Earth, asteroidal impacts created so many of those craters, we're tying it in with the story of the last extinction, the real science behind the death of the dinosaurs, with our special guest, Dr. Gerta Keller. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Talk about stepping up. Bang! Bang! It's time to level up your game. Introducing the all-new ESPN app. All of ESPN, all in one place. Your home for the most live sports and the best championship moments.
The electricity is palpable.
Step up your game with no annual contract required. It's the ultimate fan experience. Level up for more on the ESPN app or at stream.espn.com. Sign up now.
Claptrap here. 2 big things are coming this fall. Borderlands 4 and Spotify Wrapped. So stop listening to that one playlist that reminds you of your ex who only made you cry. Talking about you, Veronica. And pre-order Borderlands 4, coming out September 12th.
Rated mature.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Komm du Nosk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage. Rage against the dying of the light. A famous quote from Dylan Thomas and often repeated in that great movie, if you haven't seen it, Interstellar, talking about the need for the survival for the human race, human existence. Ladies and gentlemen, we tie that in here at 31 minutes after the hour with our special guest at the top of hour number 1, Dr. Gerta Keller. Her book, which comes out on the 9th, a very interesting book, folks, by Diversion Books, entitled The Last Extinction, The Real Science Behind the Death of the Dinosaurs. Doctor, thank you for being with us. I know it's early in the morning for you, but many of our listeners around the nation, I'm sure, are excited to hear the rest of this particular story. But with your okay, let's go back and give everybody out there an education on many of these 5 individual extinction periods, and I know we have a short amount of time. So the first one, as I'm reading it, the Ordovician, Silurian existence, or when we had this particular event for the wiping out of many, many species, 440 million years ago. We had global cooling, dropping of sea levels, supercontinent Gondwana, they say, moved to the South Pole, and marine life died. I mean, how do they know this? I mean, 440 million years ago is not a hop, skip, and a jump. I mean, that's impossible to even imagine that much time and space and through the Earth.
Well, you just have to date them.
Mm-hmm.
Then it makes it easier.
And how do you date things like that? This is interesting. I mean, when you look, how does one do that? Because I'm fascinated by this. I've always heard about they take core samples and they look for what, and how do you actually get a date out of something like that?
Well, right now the best dating is uranium-thorium dating.
Mm-hmm.
And that is now with very well for quite a few years now, the best method, which is actually done in Princeton by my colleague, who is extremely good at this. And his name is Blair Schöne.
Mm-hmm.
And his students, and in fact, they are the ones that I introduced originally to work on Deccan. That means volcanic eruptions in India.
As you mentioned, yes. Mm-hmm.
And basically you use these tiny zircon crystals, which they will analyze, and if they are well preserved, they actually can get the year as close as to, say, 27,000 years.
Interesting. That's interesting. Because I can't imagine, Doctor, I know you have a better mind on this than maybe I do, and certainly I do, and many listeners. 440 million years ago, I mean, that's incredible. We look at longevity of a human to pass the triple-digit number, and we're talking that far. It's just an incredible story. Doctor, you're lighting up the phone line here as we would, again, journey into time and space with the listeners. They rule on this radio station and show. With your okay, Doctor, let's say good morning to Richie in Putnam County. You're on with Dr. Gerta Keller. How are you this morning? Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Hello, I'm doing great. This show is fascinating. You have a fascinating guest on. I mean, we've been led to believe, we know it's been debunked, that oil came from the dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. And we also now, they have frozen mammoth elephants that have been taken out of the icy lands of Siberia and everything. Now, the DNA from those woolly mammoths, I don't think you can actually recreate a woolly mammoth 100%, but if you can find an elephant, they say the Asian elephant is very close DNA-wise to a woolly mammoth. Will we ever see a woolly mammoth? And will we ever see the day that man becomes more fascinated with saving their civilization like America, instead of being fascinated by things like AI, saying AI is going to destroy us when we know the third world will destroy America?
Yeah, here you go. Wow.
Go ahead.
Richie, you bring up some good points, Doctor. I'm interested to hear your response to what Richie's talking about the preservation of DNA. I mean, is there any way to find the DNA from these particular creatures? And who knows, in future labs, maybe recreate them and hatch them again. Is that sci-fi or is that possible?
I think at the present it's more sci-fi because climate change is not going to survive any woolly mammoth.
Interesting.
Because it's just going to get too hot.
Wow. Richie, you always bring up some good points. You get the last word here as we move forward. I think the good doctor has given us some answers, but again, science is always looking for what? The search for truth, right, Doctor? That's what you're looking for. The search for truth. Richie, your final comment?
Okay, right, great. You have a tremendous guest here tonight. But science is always trying to move forward, and there are scientific companies that are trying to bring back the woolly mammoth. I don't think you could do it 100%, but they do have DNA. So the thing is, I think as Americans, we should be looking to also preserve America and not only the sciences and everything else. That's the way I look at it. AI is not going to destroy us. The third world will destroy us.
Well, Richie, stay tuned for hour number 2. We have a gentleman who's going to talk about the value-added benefits of AI. And like I said last night when we had Dr. Patrick Wood on, he was talking about some of the things we need to watch. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. The Dr. Sky Experience is just warming up. Thank you, Richie in Putnam County. Let's say good morning to John in Brooklyn. You're on, of course, with Dr. Gerta Keller. How are you doing this morning?
I am ecstatic. I'm a former paleontologist myself, and when I was in grad school, I was reading some of Dr. Keller's papers.
Amen. How about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you about that.
See, you're very popular, Doctor. But, John...
No, she has this reputation as being one of our great marine micropaleontologists, and I concur with her that dinosaurian diversity was affected by the Deccan Trap eruptions. I mean, there is signs of, from what I've seen from the fossil record, of this decrease going on. The final nail, though, may have still been that asteroid, but still, we do know from the fossil record that there are these declines in overall dinosaurian diversity. By that, I talk about the non-avian dinosaurs, not the birds.
Right.
their descendants.
Right.
No, you bring up some good points, John. So from one paleontologist to another and a geologist, how about that, John? Isn't that incredible? We get to hear that you've been researching her, and obviously we're fortunate to have Dr.
Well,
Gerta
I haven't read her work in years, but when I heard now that you're having her, I said, "Oh my God!" It brings me back to when I was in graduate school and even in college. I went to Brown University, so you can imagine who I'd studied with at Brown. So
yes, a very good university
I'm saying
indeed.
that to Dr. Keller. So
yes, a wonderful university
really
indeed.
amazing.
And off a different subject, both of you, we had a very special guest on here, the son of Nikita Khrushchev, the former Soviet leader. Sergei became a good friend of ours and would comment on Soviet and American relations, the good stuff of Brown University. Thank you, John in Brooklyn. Appreciate your time. Let's move forward and say good morning to Bill in Huntington. Bill, good morning. How are you? How are you doing today?
I have a hard question. Okay.
Go ahead.
Now, during the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, there was a subclass of cephalopods in the ocean called the ammonites. And at the same time, there was a similar class, the nautiloids. But the ammonites are gone, and the nautilus is still alive. Okay?
Right. Correct.
Yeah. That is the question. Why?
Good question.
And because the ammonites were much more specialized than the nautiloids. And so they were easier to survive. They could more easily survive. And most of the ammonites were so highly specialized that they died out very quickly.
It's amazing. So it's all about survival, right?
It's survival like that quote, of the fittest.
Right, like I said that quote there. This is amazing, Bill. And I love the quote because how many people have seen, or if you haven't seen it, Interstellar, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Dylan Thomas. What is it, ladies and gentlemen? A statement about human existence and the fight to stay alive for our species, which is so important. Bill, thank you for your time. We're pressed on time here, and I want to give a fair opportunity to as many people as possible. Dr. Keller, this is interesting. We'll never get to the top of every subject here as we talk here before we go to the last break, before we reach the top of hour number 1. But I'm honored to have you, and you can tell by the people out there that there's a great interest in this particular subject. And what do? Not for me to stand on a soapbox. Your searching for the truth comes out loud and clear here because you're not going to take a no. And people, when you read The Last Extinction, we've only begun to talk about how this individual, Dr. Gerta Keller, continued to fight against all of the negativity that she went through. And right, Doctor, just like Vera Rubin, who was denied getting her PhD, what a shame. I mean, look at how many women out there are equally qualified, and it certainly should be based on the ability, not on your sex, right? I mean, that's totally ridiculous. And you said before, it still goes on, right? Isn't that terrible?
Yes, it still goes on.
I know, I hit a raw nerve here, but you know what? Hey, look, should a man, just because he's a guy, get the job because he's now the guy? And again, it should be based on, without me standing on a soapbox.
But that no longer is as common.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Well, let me make some progress.
I was the first woman in science at Stanford. There were 3 of us that were accepted as women.
Yes.
And then later on, I was the first woman at Princeton.
That's amazing.
And it took many years.
Right. Perseverance.
Before I actually was accepted. And maybe I've still not been accepted. Who knows?
So, Doctor, what's your advice to young women out there listening about this? Your words, not mine. Tell us, simply, what's your words about continuing to move forward with what your passion is?
They must work hard. As a woman, it's particularly important. You have to work harder than any man. I'm sorry to say.
Well, you've said a lot there, and I think it's easier and better than the way I would have phrased it, because you're the living proof of it. Doctor, we're coming up on the next break here. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Joan in Manhattan, Pamela in New Jersey, Steve in Arizona, and maybe still time, not maybe, time for you, ladies and gentlemen, at 1-800-848-9222 as we move to the top of hour number 1 of the Dr. Sky Experience. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Extinction is the rule, survival is the exception. A great quote from apropos, of course, by the late Carl Sagan. 48 minutes after the hour, as we continue with Dr. Gerta Keller, her new book, ladies and gentlemen, coming out on the 9th from Diversion Books, The Last Extinction, The Real Science Behind the Death of the Dinosaurs. Let's continue with the callers as we welcome Pamela in New Jersey. Good morning, Pamela. Your question or comment?
Oh, good morning. Then volcanism would explain, since hot air rises, and why the taller species disappeared and the species that were able to spend some time in water or lower to the ground survived over time and developed, like the alligator, etc.
Yes. Doctor, this is interesting.
I did not quite understand.
I'm sorry, could you?
There was some interference.
Yes, Pamela. I'm also hearing, Doctor, a little bit of static on the line. Can you please repeat, Pamela? I apologize.
Okay, volcanism would explain, hot air, why the taller species perished, and because hot air rises, and obviously it's high up in the air to begin with. And why the lower species, lower to the ground, or those species that were able to stay some time in water, survived and developed, like the alligator and other animals that survived that period, insects, cockroaches, etc.
I think I heard that, Doctor. Did you hear clearly what Pamela was asking?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of different animals that you're mentioning, but if you are... The alligators, for example, is the closest relative to the surviving dinosaurs. And that is probably one reason why it survived, that it had better DNA, perhaps.
Interesting.
On the other hand, you're looking at a number of other species. You would have to look at how well they could survive to begin with, how well were they developed, and so it's a lot of experience that you have to look at in order to actually find out what and which species would make it and which ones would die out. So it's difficult to know to begin with the groups that you are trying to mention.
Thank you, Pamela in New Jersey. Sorry we don't have much time here. We're trying to get as many of the callers in here, Doctor, and do thank each one who's calling. And ladies and gentlemen, our apology, mine particularly, if we don't get you on in this hour. We certainly will appreciate your continuance into hour number 2, maybe with a different subject. Let's say good morning to Steve in the state that I'm in Arizona. Good morning. How are you, Steve?
Thank you, Dr. Sky and Dr. Keller. Dr. Keller, I am an engineer. I went to school in a completely all-male college for engineering, and I remember the first time I met a lady who was a female engineer, and I was just blown away. But I learned that, they have some really good insight, and I should pay attention. And so I appreciate your efforts to make, to do well in your field of your study and your disciplines are very much appreciated.
That's a great comment, Steve, and you describe yourself as an engineer. What railroad was that? I'm just kidding. Sorry.
It was the electrical railroad.
I'm just kidding. Doctor, you see that there's passion out there for everybody to ascribe to their level of competence. And again, in the few moments that we have, I've said it, and I don't want to overly say it, but yes, you're a survivor of this whole story. And it could be really two books that I get out of this. You as a female, the fight to continue to do what you want to do. Your passion comes through loud and clear. And obviously the whole story that you're talking about here about, hey, you went up against Nobel Prize winner Luis Alvarez, and hey, you're bringing up different stories with the search for the truth. Steve in New Jersey, thank you very much. Let's say good morning to Joan in Manhattan. Joan, good morning. You've been patiently waiting. How are you this morning?
Hi, Dr. Sky. Dr. Keller, number one, what is the evidence for this volcanic action? And was it mostly in India? You mentioned India. And number two, would that mean that the dinosaurs, I imagine when volcanoes erupt, there's lots of ash and there's lots of matter, particulate matter that's thrown up to the atmosphere that might block out the sun for a period of time. And if I'm not mistaken, dinosaurs relied on vegetation. They were vegetarians. And if there's no sun, there's nothing growing. And did they die of starvation, or did they die of heat, or what?
Joan, great questions. Limited time, Doctor, if you would address those, and I know you'll do a great job.
Not really. I'll address them very quickly.
Okay.
First of all, there are enormous volcanic eruptions in India over a long, long period of time. That does not mean that the sky ever gets dark. The eruptions come out in big bulges, but then it's thrown around the world. And that doesn't mean it gets dark. It just falls back down all over the world, for that matter.
Yes.
In a period of 2 to 3 months.
That's amazing. I'm sorry to cut everybody short here, but like an air traffic controller, I'm trying to bring in every flight and get it off the ground because of the time constraints. But Joan in Manhattan, thank you so much. I appreciate you being part of the Dr. Sky experience. Let's say good morning to Tony in New Jersey as we go to the top of the hour. You're on with Dr. Gerta Keller.
Hi, Dr. Sky. Hi, Dr. Keller. I wanted to just thank you guys. I noticed listening to you, Dr. Keller, that you are so into the sensitivity of finding and discovering and mapping and telling the history of what you're finding, the truth of the history. And that's important. I noticed listening to you, you're so creative in the way you do it. You're a Pisces, and I just found that really very appealing to me, and your approach is so different, and maybe that's why you're so successful. Thanks for being here tonight.
Well, thank you.
Tony, thank you for being part of the show. Doctor, this is amazing. We'll try to get our last caller in this particular hour, but before we close out the hour, let me thank you so much for staying up with us, and I appreciate your perseverance. Again, ladies and gentlemen, The Last Extinction, The Real Science Behind the Death of the Dinosaurs. That particular book is coming out from Diversion Books, I think you mentioned, on September the 9th. With that, let's conclude our hour with Max in Manhattan. You've been patient. Good morning. How are you?
Thank you both for this wonderful talk. I'd like to know what the professor thinks of an Atlas 31, and has she ever had any dealings with the Smithsonian Institution.
Interesting.
Yes. And why are you asking about the Smithsonian Institution?
I just understand that they have a good deal of information from the Americas that goes buried and doesn't get reported.
You mean it doesn't get reported from the Smithsonian?
Well, there are many things that get interned to the Smithsonian that do not get reported to the public.
Oh. Well, the Smithsonian Institution is supposed to publish any new science just like the rest of us does who are academics.
Wow.
So I know a lot of people who are writing science papers at the Smithsonian.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this hour, the first hour of the Dr. Sky Experience. Again, heartfelt thanks to you, Dr. Keller. I hope we can talk again, and maybe in a longer format about this whole subject, because I think it needs to be put out. And I think, obviously, if you haven't done a TED Talk on this, I certainly think that would be a suggestion from me. Have you done that in a TED Talk forum? Because that would be an amazing experience to watch, listen, and interact with the audience.
Well, I would be welcome.
That would be wonderful.
Thank
you so much, Doctor. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?